Hey there, welcome back to The Magic in the Music. I'm Jen. As you may know, we recently returned from a trip to Disneyland. We are actually annual pass holders at Disney World, and in spite of living in the Pacific Northwest, we don't travel to Disneyland really all that often. So today, we are going to discuss Disneyland from the perspective of a Disney World fan. So you've been to Disney World multiple times, or maybe you're a DVC member, annual pass holder, maybe you're local to Disney World and you know the parks like the back of your hand. I'll break down the details you need to know to decide if Disneyland is the right trip for you and how to be prepared for what to expect when you get there. Hey folks, we also have a special announcement for you today. We have started our own Etsy shop. That's right. We design and produce t-shirts and apparel that are perfect for your next Disney Parks trip. I'm wearing one of our new t-shirt designs today. It's kind of inspired by the Tiffany box, in case you hadn't noticed. You can find this shirt and many other designs in our shop. We also have a selection of designs that make great gifts for music lovers or DVC members. Our designs are inspired by our love for music, Disney parks, and DVC, and they make the perfect thing to wear for your next Disney trip. It's a great way to support our channel and get a cool shirt too. You can find the link for our Etsy shop in the description below. All right, let's get to it, friends. So what are the differences between Disneyland and Disney World? And I'm not just gonna go over all the simple things. We're gonna dig a little bit deeper for you today. So the first thing is very obvious, it's the size. Disneyland is 500 acres, while Disney World is about 43 square miles or over 27,000 acres. That's right, Disney World is about 50 times larger than Disneyland in terms of actual size. While Disneyland is less than 1/50th the physical size of Disney World, it has a lot packed into that small space. Another big difference at Disneyland is that it's right in the middle of the city of Anaheim. So you're going to be able to see the city around you. You are not in a Disney bubble like you are at Disney World. I really noticed this when I was taking photos at night. I could see the lights of the surrounding city and like a lot of light kind of bleeding through. That's not something I'm used to seeing at Disney World as much. You will walk a lot at both Disneyland and Disney World, so that's going to be the same. A big difference is that park hopping at Disneyland is a breeze. You just walk across the small esplanade and you're there. The two theme parks are basically just facing each other. Along with the smaller park size, you are going to find that at Disneyland, a lot of the especially older Fantasyland attractions are very, very compact. So the queues are very, very narrow. Some of the spaces you move through, some of the ride vehicles are very narrow because they were built as far back as 1955. So you will definitely feel the difference in Fantasyland of how really little some of those spaces are. At Disneyland, transportation is really different from Disney World. You basically are going to do all your traveling by foot. You may have a hotel shuttle that's transporting you back and forth depending on where you're staying if it's a little farther away, but you're not going to be taking big Disneyland transportation systems. You won't be taking a boat or a Skyliner like at Disney World. There is a monorail, but the monorail is actually, honestly, it's more kind of a ride than a means of transportation. It's not like a full-size monorail where you can like stand up and, really get around. It's not a huge system. Think of it more like a ride, and I think that your expectations will be more in line. If you're really into the transportation options, all the boats and the ferries and, the Skyliner and all this, you're not going to experience that at Disneyland. Let's talk about a big difference between the two parks, and it's the weather. The humidity level in California is much, much lower than Florida. So you are definitely going to feel this. If that humidity bothers you, you might really enjoy California. I also do notice that because it's so dry in California, you're gonna be like needing to moisturize all the time. After a few days, I felt like that guy at the end of the third Indiana Jones movie when he just kind of dried up and disintegrated. We were so dry, we were going through lotion like crazy, but you're gonna notice some differences in the climate for sure. Now in Disneyland, most of the queues are actually outdoors, and a lot of those attraction queues are not covered. You probably won't even need it because it just doesn't rain very much there. In contrast, in Disney World, you're going to find a lot more of the queues are indoors and in air conditioning because Disney World tends to have, has that tropical climate. Disney World tends to have a lot more of those like really violent rain showers, but they're brief and then they kind of pass. Disneyland tends to be drier overall. Generally speaking, most people would consider the weather in California to be better throughout most of the year. But I also have asthma, and so I'm pretty sensitive to pollution. So when I go to the LA area and after I'm there for a couple of days, I tend to get uncomfortable and need my inhaler. If you're a bit of a canary in a coal mine like me, you might find that you're not quite as comfortable with that level of pollution. Of course, it's going to also depend on when you travel. For me, that pollution's not as bad in the winter, so that was better on our most recent trip. It definitely doesn't rain as much in Disneyland, and it doesn't feel quite as hot as Disney World, again, because the humidity level is so much lower in California, generally speaking. Another major difference between Disney World and Disneyland is the resorts. Disney World has dozens of on-site Disney-run resorts. Disneyland has only 3 on-site Disney resorts: the Disneyland Hotel, Paradise Pier Hotel, and the Grand Californian, which also has a DVC wing to it. The new DVC tower is currently under construction by the Disneyland Hotel, which is going to add another DVC component in the near future. The estimated completion for that is 2023, although we will update you when we get more details about that. If you're used to traveling to Disney World, you might say, well, I have to stay on property. How am I going to figure out which one to stay in? It's not really as important to stay on site at Disneyland because you can walk from the off-site hotels to the parks, and you can walk back and forth very easily. You can get food off-site more easily. There's just a lot more going in and out because there isn't really this bubble, this barrier to entry. Even so, we love staying in the DVC wing of the Grand Californian Hotel and Spa. All right, let's get to the good stuff, the rides and attractions. Some of the rides at Disneyland are exactly the same as Disney World, some have small differences, and some are there that you don't experience at Disney World. Space Mountain and Splash Mountain have different ride vehicle configurations. So Space Mountain in Disneyland is one track instead of the 2 separate tracks, but instead of having the individual seated front to back, one in front of the other, tandem style, they are actually side by side and you go in pairs. I prefer this configuration. This Disneyland configuration is more comfortable for me. On the other hand, Splash Mountain at Disneyland is the single file, like the Space Mountain at Disney World. And so, you're kind of trading one for the other. You lose that kind of traveling with a partner next to you at Splash Mountain. So Space Mountain and Splash Mountain have opposite configurations between the 2 parks. You get a side-by-side Space Mountain at Disneyland and a single-file Space Mountain at Disneyland, and then a side-by-side Splash Mountain at Disney World and a single-file Splash Mountain at Disneyland. So in my mind, you kind of trade one for the other. Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, it's the original, and it is quite a bit longer than the Disney World version of that. Be aware of that before you go on there if you have to use the restroom. Another category is rides that are only at Disneyland or only at Disney World. Some that are at Disneyland but not Disney World are Indiana Jones Adventure, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Web Slingers, a Spider-Man adventure, that's a brand new one, the Incredicoaster, the Matterhorn, Storybook Land Canal Boats, Casey Jr. Circus Train, Radiator Springs Racers, and all the rest of the attractions in Cars Land, Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, Pinocchio's Daring Journey, Snow White's Enchanted Wish, Sleeping Beauty Castle Walkthrough, and also many of the little kiddie carnival-style rides at Disney's California Adventure. There are also some differences in the lands. A big difference is that because of a deal that Marvel previously had with Universal before Disney acquired it, they are not allowed to use most of the Marvel intellectual properties east of the Mississippi, but west of the Mississippi, which is Disneyland, you can actually have Avengers Campus and some different things like that. So you will notice differences in the lands. You have Radiator Springs, Cars Land there, and so there are some other differences. And of course, in Disneyland Park, you have New Orleans Square, which we do not have at Disney World. Some rides are in both of the parks, but you have really noticeable differences between them. Space Mountain is pretty different between the 2 theme parks. Splash Mountain is more similar, but just the ride configuration difference we talked about before. Pirates, a longer ride. Haunted Mansion has just very minor differences in the way that the ride is laid out, but it's basically the same type of experience. There are others that have more significant differences. The Disneyland Railroad is the same basic idea where it goes around the perimeter of the park. Magic Kingdom has it around the perimeter. Disneyland Park has it around the perimeter. But at Disneyland, there is actually this kind of series of show scenes towards the end as you're coming back in towards the station Main Street. And that is not present at Disney World. It's a Small World has some minor differences. Dumbo is very similar, but only one Dumbo. We have double Dumbo at Florida. Winnie the Pooh has some minor differences. So Tower of Terror is no longer at Disney California Adventure. It actually has been rethemed to Guardians of the Galaxy. So same basic idea in terms of the ride experience as Disney World, but it has like a new packaging and theming around it. Gadget's Go Coaster is very similar to Goofy's Barnstormer at Disney World. The Jungle Cruise, very similar, but some small differences. And the Enchanted Tiki Room, also present at both parks. Again, some differences in the show. Autopia is also at Disneyland, and it goes under the name Tomorrowland Speedway in Florida. But again, some minor differences, same basic concept. We also have Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, which is very similar to Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin. You have the monorail, like I mentioned before, not really a transportation system, more of a ride or attraction. And you have Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which again has some minor differences. The basic ride experience is very similar. And the final category of rides and attractions are things that are either identical or just nearly identical. So this category, we don't even really prioritize doing these rides and attractions at Disneyland because we know we can just do them at Disney World and have basically the same experience. Some of these would include Ariel's Undersea Adventure, which is same as the Ariel ride at Disney World, Toy Story Mania, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, Rise of the Resistance, Star Tours, Mickey's PhilharMagic, Turtle Talk with Crush, Disney Junior Dance Party, Mad Tea Party, and Peter Pan's Flight. For these rides, you'll have basically the same experience as you have at Disney World. Usually just the queue is different. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that just because you know what to expect in terms of queuing for a particular ride at Disney World doesn't mean it's going to be the same experience at Disneyland. For example, we rarely wait in a line to ride Pirates of the Caribbean at Disney World, but every time I've gone to Disneyland, I have had to wait in line for Pirates, even when it was a slow time of year. The same goes for Star Tours and Voyage of the Little Mermaid. You may have to wait in line for an attraction that is typically a walk-on or a very short wait at Disney World. This also happened to us with Soarin'. There was quite a long wait when we were accustomed to waiting maybe only 10 or 15 minutes for that attraction. Even still, we didn't have to wait in lines really all that much on our recent trip. It wasn't bad, probably because we traveled at an off-peak time. If you're trying to figure out when are the best times to travel to Disneyland, we highly recommend that you check out touringplans.com. We're not sponsored by them, we just love their product and we think you should check it out. All right, now for some really delicious stuff, the dining. Disneyland has some really good dining options, but there are many fewer table service restaurants than at Disney World. I think Disneyland Park itself actually has better dining options than Magic Kingdom, but Disney World offers you the option of dining at the nearby resorts as well, which increases your dining options significantly. So if you include kind of that bubble around the park, you actually have a lot of other choices too. We had a very difficult time getting any dining reservations at all, so we ultimately ate only quick service food on this trip. We didn't have any sit-down restaurant experiences at all this time. I think we were overall more satisfied with the quick service options at Disneyland than we had been on previous trips when we had done more of the table service dining. So it actually worked out really well for us this time. Both parks utilize mobile order. A tip for you is to try to order in person if the mobile order spots are all too far out. We had good luck ordering in person. This is one of the complaints I've heard about mobile order for both parks, is that sometimes the available window might be an hour or 2 hours out from now when you want to order and you're hungry, you don't want to wait that long. And so they're saying, oh, we don't want to have to plan that far in advance. We found that if the window was too far out, we just would go directly to the quick service restaurant, and we had 100% luck on being able to just order directly with them. Let's talk about snacks. So Disneyland has some great snacks. Churros, and more churros. Churros are a big deal at Disneyland. Yes, there are churros at Disney World, but they're everywhere. There's like a churro cart everywhere at Disneyland, and different flavors of churros and all kinds of churros. So if you like churros, you are going to love being at Disneyland. Something that I really enjoy at Disneyland is that they offer elote, or Mexican street corn. It's really good, and I just love corn. There are only a couple of places in Disney World where you can get that, but it feels like it's everywhere in Disneyland as well. So that's great. Because Disneyland has a New Orleans Square area, you can also get beignets at Disneyland. Yes, it is possible to get beignets at Disney World as well, but you have to go over to Port Orleans French Quarter in order to get them. That's not quite as convenient. Another thing that is different about Disneyland versus Disney World is that when you get those Mickey bars, which by the way, I think those are easier to find at Disney World, probably because it's hotter. They have them in a lot of places. When you get them at Disney World, they turn into a melted mess really quickly. But at Disneyland, they stay like frozen and rock hard for a long time, at least on our most recent trip. Our kids, they handed us the Mickey bars and they said, you're going to need to walk around with these for a while so they start to soften and you can finally eat them. So it's just sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum. Something we loved about Disneyland is that there are lots and lots of benches and places to sit and eat your snacks. Disneyland has a lot of like seating walls and places that you can sit and rest and eat. And I really wish that Disney World had more of that. I know that recently, before they opened Galaxy's Edge, Disneyland had a specific project where they were adding in more of those kinds of things. I really would like to see that at Disney World. It definitely needs it. Something that was a major inconvenience for us at Disneyland, being used to Disney World, is that they did not have a refillable popcorn bucket. Yeah, you can buy a bucket, but it's not refillable. And we really rely on this with our kindergartner, who really likes to eat popcorn all the way through the Disney World trip and very picky eater. And we always know that we can rely on giving him that bucket of popcorn and he can be satisfied. He's got something to snack on and he's going to be okay. And that was not great for us at Disneyland. They not only did not have the refillable popcorn bucket, the popcorn was more than twice as expensive as those refills that we could have had at Disney World. I'm not exaggerating. We probably spent $80, $90, maybe $100 just on popcorn and popcorn refills, where that would have been just a fraction of that at Disney World. And the other thing is, when we pay $5 for that container of popcorn, it doesn't even fill up the bucket, which normally at Disney World, that bucket would be, I think it's about $2.25 or $2.50 to get that refill at Disney World. So, wow, that was like a major fail for us. Our family would have been a lot more comfortable for a lot less money if we could have gotten that refillable popcorn bucket. So we will really enjoy having that back at Disney World on our next trip. Another big difference that you may have heard of about Disney World versus Disneyland is tourists versus locals. So at Disneyland, there are a lot of locals who visit the parks, a lot of annual pass holders, and they come in from the surrounding areas each day. On the weekends in particular, we found that the parks got busier in the evenings as locals arrived, or, on a Friday night, they finish work and then they'll come in and hang out in the park. While at Disney World, the parks would get emptier because tourists would tire out and they'd be heading back to their hotels and resorts. Alternatively, we didn't find rope drop to be quite as busy at Disneyland. We also noticed a lot of people on dates and really like a lot more public displays of affection, a lot more like couples who were just kind of there for kind of a date evening. That's different than being at Disney World, and we tend to see more like families on vacation. We also noticed that there didn't feel like there were as many strollers or ECVs. And so that was helpful because it wasn't quite as crowded getting around some of the paths, which some of them are quite narrow at Disneyland, particularly in the Fantasyland area. We figured that this was because if you were a local and you were just coming in for the evening, you might not really bring that much with you. And that made sense to us. The Lunar New Year celebration was going on when we visited Disneyland recently, and it really made the Paradise Gardens area of DCA much more fun and lively. Last time we visited, that area was really dead. But it also brought out really big crowds in the evening, so it made it a lot busier in that area, and the lines got really long at the food booths. I actually liked the event quite a bit. It made that area feel more like the World Showcase in Epcot, and in terms of the vibe and energy, it was a lot more like World Showcase, so that really appealed to me. So, should you go to Disneyland if you are a Disney World regular guest? Absolutely! There's a lot of new stuff to experience at Disneyland Resort that's new and fresh to a Disney World regular. Highlights include Cars Land, Avengers Campus at DCA, and New Orleans Square, and the classic Fantasyland attractions at Disneyland. Of course, seeing Walt's original park is special, and there's a lot of history there. If you are a Disney World regular, you just might find that Disneyland rekindles your love for Disney parks because it gives you some new experiences. In particular, this would apply to Orlando locals who don't get the thrill of traveling to Disney World, or people who really go to Disney World a lot. Just like in a relationship, mixing things up and trying something new can really reignite the spark and remind you of what you love about it in the first place. We really think this applies to Disney parks as well. So why not give yourself that thrill by traveling to Disneyland? We think you'll love the classic charm and the comfortable climate of this historic theme park that started it all. Hey, if you found this video helpful, make sure you hit that like button. Leave us a comment. Tell us, are you planning a trip to Disneyland? If you want to see more about Disney parks, click on this link right up here. If you love Disney, music, DVC, and family fun, check out this playlist right over here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day, everyone. Bye!